Oh, man, I'm excited for this one. Hello, fellow scribes. As always, like, comment, and subscribe. Follow all the socials in the description. If you have any questions on my rating system, I will have a link to explaining my book rating for you. Today, I'm going to be enjoying some Cider Boys Strawberry Magic. And I love this one. I actually had it at a pub, and for me, it tastes like strawberry bubblegum. Anyways, of course, not sponsored or anything like that. Let's see if I can get this open. Oh yeah, love me a good cider. Anyways, how are y'all doing today? I know you've probably seen this outfit before, and that's just because, well, I'm recording a bunch of books all on the same day. So today is going to be a real fun day, let me tell you. So what am I reviewing this time? Well, I have Dragonage, The Stolen Throne. I'm super excited about this because back in 2020, during the plague that shall not be named, we decided to go to secondhand game stores and pick up a bunch of games to play over the course of the year so that we could keep ourselves entertained. And one of those franchises that we actually ended up picking up was the Dragonage franchise. So we picked up Dragonage 2, and then we also picked up Dragonage Inquisition, and then later on picked up Dragonage Origins. I ended up falling in love with Dragonage, the franchise as a concept. I think it's a really great world to play in. I actually love Dragonage 2 and Dragonage Inquisition for two totally different reasons. I know that they play somewhat differently to one another, and I love and appreciate both for equal measures. It's actually a good thing that we played Dragonage 2 first because of the fact that it's just an easier story to follow as far as tone setting, and then the fact that it was mostly all took place in one particular area. A lot of people didn't like that, but I personally did. I also liked the game because I ended up getting it so many years later after they released it that when I purchased the game, I got everything in its completed phase, DLC and everything. So, needless to say, picked up all 3 Dragon Age games with all their DLC. I have not finished Origins, and you can go and see one of my Dragon Age, my only gaming video at the moment, my Dragon Age ranking the characters right now, and you can see the level of disrespect that I have. But I will eventually, the goal is at some point this year is to probably play through it to the end so I can get the full thing that's going on. But this is where that becomes interesting. I decided that I really wanted to read the books that are associated with the game franchises, because typically when I'm doing these big massive RPGs like World of Warcraft and stuff like that, I do like to read the novels that go with them. It gives me more insight, more depth, and I get to have more fun with things that are going on outside of where my character is going. So I ended up getting the entire Dragon Age series, and I'm going to review it from start to finish. And for right now, I'm starting with book 1, which is The Stolen Throne. And this actually takes place before Dragon Age Origins. So before I get into any of this, let us go ahead and roll those stats and show us what you got. So this first book in the series takes place in Ferelden. Anyone who's familiar with the Dragon Age world, there are several key continental regions, but typically the main central stage point happens to be between Orlesia and Ferelden. I'm sorry, not Orlesian, Orlais, and they are the Orlesian Empire. There we go. Usually a lot of the conflicts take place between Ferelden or Orlesia. In this particular instance, this takes place back in time before the events in Dragon Age Origins, to where Ferelden has currently been conquered by Orlais, and they have placed a usurper king in substitution of the actual Ferelden nobility. And so it follows Prince Maric, who is the son of Queen Moira, or known as the Rebel Queen. So her father was the one that I guess was usurped, and so during her lifetime, she's been going around trying to build up the rebel army to take her kingdom back. Prince Maric has basically lived his entire life like on the run constantly, and so what happens is that during one of these secret meetings, the Rebel Queen is betrayed and she's murdered, and Prince Maric has to basically run for his life. During his moment of fleeing through the woods in the middle of the night, he ends up encountering a ranger and a companion, and the ranger is named Loghain. Once he meets up with Loghain, he ends up building up the rebel army, and he ends up finishing what his mother started. All of it is about him being on the run, his little like group, how they are, taking back their land and trying to convince the nobles of Ferelden to join his side and to go against the usurper. And that's essentially the summary of The Stolen Throne. It's not very complex. It takes the whole getting back the throne takes the entirety of the book. The character is constantly on the run. He's constantly trying to build up his army so that way he can find and wait out a crucial point. And there's battles that go back and forth as they vie for different spots and try to get the upper hand on the usurper king. Again, there's not a lot to it. It's pretty straightforward as far as the summary is concerned. So it's everything else that ends up being the interesting part. First off, let's talk about our antagonist party's side. Megran the usurper. He does not like Ferelden. He was placed there specifically by the Emperor of Orlais to hold the fort, so to speak. And Megran is pretty much a two-dimensional, narcissistic. He's cruel, he's temperamental, he's childish, he's narcissistic, literally anything and everything you can think of as far as every bad, petulant child trait you can think of is in this man-child stuffed in here. There's not a lot to him, but he is your typical mustache-twirling villain from that side of the fence, but he doesn't really do a lot in this book. He's not, there's times where you see him throwing a fit. He just wants to be rid of the rebel army, and he doesn't care by whatever measure he has to get in order for this to happen. On top of the fact, he actually doesn't like Ferelden at all. He wants to go back to Orlais. Conquering the rebel army is just kind of like trying to get rid of this constant thorn in my side that I can't exactly ignore, but they just won't freaking go away. He's trying to snuff them out. It does allude in the book that the Emperor and him kind of had like a fling, or at least a relationship, of some kind, and that basically it kind of went south or sour, and so he was ousted from court in Orlais. Him ruling Ferelden is more of a punishment than it is like a privilege, and you can really tell because he is constantly railing on Ferelden's style with all sorts of Thetis equivalent slurs, so to speak. If you're familiar with the lore and the games and stuff like that, you'll get exactly what I'm talking about. Underneath him is where you've got really the true antagonist of this story, and then a side antagonist that I'm still not totally sold on. So the main one that's really the puppet master on the antagonist party is this mage called Severin. And basically he was put into Megran's service, I believe, like as a contract kind of thing. So he has no loyalties to Megran, but Megran being the tyrant, one trigger off to a full like mental breakdown. The two kind of have a very interesting symbiotic relationship. Severin uses Megran's objectives and overall desires and wants and goals to pretty much justify doing anything and everything within Severin's power to snuff out the rebel army. And he does this in a variety of different ways, one of which I will talk about in a bit. And then you've got Mother Bronak, who is actually a Ferelden chantry, head of the chantry for Ferelden. She, I don't like at all. I don't really see the point of her character. I know she has to be there because in the world of Thetis, you have two big, other than the royal families themselves, There's two different types of factions. There are the circle mages, because being a mage in this particular world is a very dangerous thing. You kind of pull through the veil and demons can possess you and move into the physical, tangible realm. So the circle mages kind of help control that process and that power through a lot of different, very controversial ways using Templars and the like. However, you've got the circle mages as one thing that Severin is kind of a part of, or at least a representative of. And then you have the Chantry, which is Thaddeus's current religious equivalent to like Christianity or something like that. They have one maker, they have like the Virgin Mary equivalent of Andraste and stuff like that, which you see more in the Inquisition video game being presented forward. And so Mother Bronach represents that part, and she's actually an ambassador to the Ferelden side of things. And I honestly, throughout the course of the story, I don't really know why she is written in the manner that she is. I don't understand her motivations. She was the one that I just didn't get, because she is making all these decisions to help Megran, who is a usurper to Ferelden. She's helping him secure the throne by pushing that he marry a Ferelden lady and, and all that other stuff. But she hates Severin, who is basically a mage. So I guess I understand the hatred on that. The animosity is because there is a lot of animosity between the Chantry, the Templars, and the Circle Mages and all that other jazz. But other than just the blind core hatred of mages, I don't understand why someone who is a woman of the Ferelden Chantry be in complete support of someone like Megran and not go with the rebels in any capacity, even during the story when she was given a few chances to actually do something to help Prince Maric, or at least the rebel army, to retake the original rightful royal family on the throne. I don't understand, most of her choices make absolutely no sense throughout the course of this story. And in the end, nothing is really revealed. So the only thing I can come to the assessment of is that she's just there as a plot pusher and served no other purpose. I think she would have been more interesting had she been playing both sides to some degree. I would have understood if maybe she felt like she obviously feels compelled and she's scared to, so she's forced to help Megran, but there's other things that maybe she does under the table to try to assist the rebels here and there somewhat, and then, try to play against Severin, because obviously her and Severin hate one another. It's just that in this particular book, Mother Bronach they never do anything with her of any significance. And it makes no justifiable sense given to where, who she represents and which side she's born and bred from. It makes no sense for her to be in full support of the usurper and have no other depth or context to her. So that's our antagonist team as a whole. And essentially Severin is leading the pack with Megran, cracking the whip from behind. And then Bronach is just there. She just exists. I don't get it. So let's move on to the protagonist team, shall we? Our heroes of the story are Prince Merrick, Loghain, and Rowan. Now, Prince Merrick is your typical, I would say he's your typical himbo. I mean, he's a very competent individual when he wants to be. The other thing is that he's spent his entire life kind of, I wouldn't say being spoiled, because he's always been on the run. So he's always been under the house of other lords and their, hosting graces, so to speak. I mean, he's lived in and out of tents and stuff like that. So he's not really a spoiled brat in any sense, but he's just naive. He's kind of, growing up, he's been very irresponsible. He's constantly in the shadow of his mother. His mother is the one with the brains to everything. He never does anything with an evil intention. He's overly trusting of a lot of people and to a fault. And so that's where Loghain comes in as kind of that countermeasure, because Loghain trusts no one. And at the beginning, he doesn't even trust Maric, because Maric is technically hiding his true identity for a little while before it finally comes out. But Loghain is your exact opposite of Maric. Loghain doesn't talk a lot. Maric never shuts up. Loghain is definitely not trusting, whereas Maric will trust anyone who walks in and says, yes, let me join your team, okay. And the two are basically night and day. They're polar opposites of one another personality-wise. And technically, they're like oil and vinegar. They really shouldn't be getting along. In no other circumstances should they ever be friends. In this particular story, it's by external bigger issues that crop up. Like, the one thing that Loghain is that he can always see the bigger picture. And this is important for someone like me who's only played games 2 and only that first little snippet of Origins, because until now, I have hated Loghain. I think he's a terrible human being. And I have had an unjust spurning for him since the get-go. So reading this book really gave me some perspective on, honestly, Loghain is just a victim of circumstance where he literally has nothing left to give by the time he quote-unquote betrays King Kaelin. Everywhere where Maric isn't, Loghain is. He's actually a competent individual as a whole. He takes everything very seriously, and he is a wonderful commander. He's very, very smart. He thinks outside the box. He sets traps for the enemies. And Maric is the one that just blindly goes in and supports him and believes in him. And so the two, oddly enough, because of this dire situation, end up being a match made in heaven for one another, because Loghain is the brains and Maric is kind of the, I wouldn't even say brawn, but he's the influence. Because he's the crown prince, all the army, the rebel army, it follows his command. And so since he's got that influence to help prop up Loghain's ideas, it ends up going 9 times out of 10, not too bad. I mean, these are battles, so there's going to be a give and take on a lot of fronts, and there's a lot of times where I think Maric ends up with so much physical damage to him throughout the course of this book that it's almost inhuman. He's the John McClane of Ferelden, but with a lot less sass, I would have to say. The third and final individual to our little trio is Rowan, and she is amazing. First off, she's actually been betrothed to Prince Maric for the whole of their lives, and she is a very capable knight and warrior herself. I mean, honestly, out of the 3 of them, she is the one that has the skill when it comes. I mean, Loghain's good at commanding scouts and coming up with crazy ideas and figuring out how to get everything going. Maric is the influence that's able to convince everyone, and to, because he's pretty much the symbol of morale, he's able to rally the troops. But Rowan is the one that's actually able to execute a lot of this crazy stuff, and she's the one that has the battle intuition out of the 3 of them from a bigger scale point of view. And she, more times often than not, she's usually rescuing either Loghain or Maric from whatever crazy situation they're in. And it's really good to see. And it's a very good balanced dynamic. What I really like about the Dragon Age world in general is that there's never been at no point in this book is there ever a question on whether she's capable because she's a woman. That's kind of taken out of the entirety as a whole. The only time that being a woman in this particular story has any impact of any significant value is when there is an issue when they go down into the deep roads. Yes, there is a deep roads travel, that there is some questioning of emotions and relationships and all that other stuff. She's constantly self-conscious about her femininity because of the fact that she is a warrior and a very capable one at that. Whenever you're dealing with someone who is essentially in a more aggressive position, that constant battle and balance between the feminine and masculine elements to your personality and your abilities does tend to bring up a little bit of self-introspection. But in most cases, the femininity only comes into the point where she's constantly questioning why Maric doesn't see her as anything more than a friend kind of thing. Rowan got friend-zoned, and it's so sad, and I feel bad for her, and I absolutely adore her, and I love everything about her. So with that being said, I have to say, there's 2 things that I ended up having a problem with. One being the pacing. Pacing was a little bit all over the place for me throughout the course of this book. I was interested, but there are so many battles that occur. What happens is that at the beginning, you're being given these big detailed battles that can somewhat slog onward over and over again. I mean, it's not like there isn't interesting stuff happening, but once you start getting to like the latter part here, like right about, you know, in this section, like you spend all of this time on the setup and then the payoff is like this big. Like the travel into the deep roads was very, very interesting, but it was on the longer side. And then the battles at the beginning are so long. Once you finally get to the end or the payoff area, you get an info dump. The ending ends up being nothing but kind of like a summary as far as everything that's happened. They spend basically one chapter concluding everything, which happens like that, and then one chapter epiloguing this like sequence of years that have transpired, and then just basically give you the quick descriptor on everything. So the pacing could have definitely been streamlined a bit, shaved down some of like all the other beginning battles here and there, and so that we could add a little bit more to the final battle, so it wasn't just a giant like end game info dump for you. That is definitely something that could be a problem for other readers. When I hit the ending, I was kind of underwhelmed to some degree. It wasn't unsatisfying because they at least answered all of the questions that you might have as far as how things concluded out. The only thing is that it was basically delivered to you in an epilogue. For those who would rather be shown and not told, then this is definitely going to be disappointing on that front. But it does, like I said, it does touch on everything. The other thing is that there actually is one more character that's added to the protagonist group about a third into the story, and she is an elf by the name of Catriel. Now, I love me some elves. I play them a lot in this franchise game, and if anyone knows about the franchise, the elves are, unfortunately, they are the enslaved race in most cases. They're treated really poorly in this world. Depending on where you are in Thedas, there's some that are treated super poorly and some that are treated all right. They have these things in the cities called alienages, which are basically this like sectored out place. All the elves live in poorer conditions and stuff like that. Also in this world, there is a bard class, and bards in Thedas are not like bards that you typically think of. Bards are actually kind of like geisha with ninjas smushed together into one class. They have all of the artistic capability of song, dance, and performance and storytelling. However, they're actually in Thedas, they're used as spies. They are very good at getting information and selling it, and they are highly trained assassins. They are extremely capable individuals. Right out the gate, and this is not going to end up being a spoiler because just the way the book presents it, is that this character Catriel is hired by Severin to infiltrate the protagonist group and to basically kill Maric. That is the end game, or at least the initial order was to take Maric alive. So it's not a spoiler that Catriel is a spy. And that's the one thing that kind of frustrated me on top of that, is I don't like it when characters are just, when authors just straight up show you that this character is going to screw over your protagonist group, mostly because then the focus gets redirected to, okay, idiots, why are you not picking up that this is very suspicious? Loghain and even Rowan kind of pick up on Catriel being like, she's too good to be true. And Maric is just naively like, oh yeah, I love this. I absolutely adore this. And, we helped her and she's helpless and I saved her and all this, this whole white knighting thing that just drives me up the wall. And so I'm spending the whole time basically just screaming at Maric as well as the rest of the team, especially when they start to buy into her shtick, so to speak. So I focus more on yelling at the protagonists than I do just trying to enjoy the story for what it is and being teased with, oh, there could be a mole or a spy or all of these weird things are happening. Why does Megran seem to know, where we're going to be at any turning point? Well, duh, it's because of Catriel. There were so many points that happen once Catriel joins the party. How did the opponent know exactly where we're going to be on a surprise mission? Well, duh, there's obviously a double agent in your group. And Well, it's obviously Catriel. I mean, all the signs are there. And why does your protagonist party not do anything about it? Like, by the time they do something about it, it's kind of, it's way too little too late. Like, it's already, like, the party's over. Everything's been lifted. It's not enjoyable for me as a reader on that front. The other thing I really dislike is that, and spoiler alert here, so go ahead and move forward on the video if this is not your thing. Obviously, with Maric being the way he is, him and Catriel hook up. Romances come in all different flavors and types. This one made me roll my eyes so hard, and it made me feel bad for Rowan because technically she is in love with Maric and he just does not feel that way about her. I mean, because obviously it's a betrothal of, you know, nobility. Love is not really the component to the union. It's, you know, power and unifying parts of the land. So once Maric reclaims his throne, marrying Rowan, who is the daughter of a very big prestigious Ferelden nobility, like, that is a power move. That's a power marriage that his mom set up for him years ago. While he loves Rowan as a, like, almost like a sister figure, he doesn't love her as like a lover. And so watching the whole thing go down between him and Catriel, and then the four of them, the entire party, how this love discord ends up shaking things up in the mix, just made me feel all manners of uncomfortable. And in a way, it was well written because obviously this was the intention. This was the intention that the author was going for. And if you're into stuff like that, where it's kind of like a love triangle / quadrangle, there's just hormones flying everywhere at one point. Like, everything that happens in the Deep Roads is just a nightmare from start to finish. Nothing good ever happens in the Deep Roads. Nothing good ever happens in the Deep Roads. For what it's worth, I can definitely say nothing good happened in the Deep Roads, except they did pick up an ally to help them take back an important battle. But that to aside, as far as the intention was concerned, it was written very well. I just don't like those types of love quadrangle things going on. It's not my shtick. It's not my cup of tea. Catriel made me roll my eyes at her left, right, and center. When I finally did start having a smidgen of empathy for her to some degree, you know, plot happens and all of that just, you know, goes down the drain. And that's all I'm gonna say on that front. I think that is the culmination of my rambly thoughts on this whole book and all of the stuff that goes on. Let me think, is there anything? I mean, not really. Rowan is a boss. That's how that goes down. Okay, so what rating do I give Dragon Age: The Stolen Throne? From a Dragon Age fangirl, and for anyone who's in the fandom and stuff like that, this is going to be an immediate buy because this is just part of the collection. Especially if you intend to have everything Dragon Age related, you definitely want to add this to your shelf. In most instances, though, I would actually recommend people to rent. If you have no clue about anything related to the Dragon Age franchise, this is going to be a rent right out the gate because you don't even know if you're going to be into the world and the setup. But I do recommend for people who are either, you know, they only like playing the video games and they're not really sure about books, like it's not their shtick, they're kind of just curious or they want to get their feet wet. The book in general is it's enjoyable, but it's straightforward and it's got a pretty basic appeal to it. So it's one of those things where I would probably actually recommend renting this to start with, giving it a read and seeing if this is more your shtick before you continue on with everything else. If you find that you like it, then by all means go ahead and buy it. I mean, the paperbacks are pretty cheap, and you know, obviously you can get anything on ebook, just makes the price point all that easier to get into. But you know, if you're not really sure, just rent it, you know, get it from a library, check it out for yourself on whether or not this is going to be an enjoyable ride for you. Me personally, it was a decent first ride. I do look forward into going into the next book. But if I knew nothing about all of this, then I would probably, if I knew nothing about the Dragon Age franchise, I probably would not be inclined to even finish the book, let alone go through the rest of the series. So I have to take that into account, that while it is a decent read, there's parts about it because of so many battles that happen and because the pacing is kind of all over the place that had I known nothing else beyond the Dragon Age franchise and my pure interest in sticking to it that way, it is possible that I may have dropped the book at some given point had I not had all this background context to go with it. So yeah, I definitely give this particular book a rent rating because I definitely believe that for people who just like high fantasy in general, this will be a great first ride for them. But it has its challenge points that, bring it down here and there where there is potential for a reader to, DNF it in some capacity. So what do you think? Do you agree, disagree? Leave comments down below for me. I would love to check them out on what your thoughts and opinions are on this whole escapade. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Go and check out my website for all my socials, as well as check out my book, Key of Arcandus, that's currently up to purchase at any major online retailer, or you can request it through your local bookshop through their distribution channels. And without further ado, I hope you have a wonderful day and take care of yourselves. Bye. I had this one decide she wants to surprise me, so I'm going to have to lock him out. Hello. She's not having any of this. Goodbye.